China is in the grips of severe protests that are showing no signs of let-ups or of dying out. The protests emerging out in the backdrop of China's controversial and strict zero-COVID policy are coming just a month after President Xi Jinping has been elected to serve another 5-year term. Protests have now begun to spread like wildfire, engulfing major cities like Shanghai, Beijing and other important cities. And calls are growing intense and louder, demanding Xi Jinping's resignation. Today in this video, we decode the protests, China's zero-COVID strategy and how much of a challenge these protests might pose for the most powerful leader in China's modern history. But before that, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to One India. Zero-COVID strategy is at the heart of this protest. And what is this zero-COVID strategy exactly? It is a strategy that basically aims to drive down and ultimately eliminate the number of COVID-19 cases by imposing extremely strict lockdowns and crippling travel bans. Initially, when the COVID-19 struck, several nations including China resorted to such harsh measures of imposing lockdown, complete travel ban, segregation, etc. By the middle of 2021, as the cost of shutting down economies and locking up entire populations for extended periods became too high to bear, several experts, including healthcare authorities as well as ordinary people, started questioning the zero-COVID approach to fight the disease. Most of the nation made changes to their strategy except New Zealand and China. China, even after facing serious criticisms, remained unwavered in its commitment to the blunt and blatant use of zero-COVID strategy. But anger at the consequences of zero-COVID had already been building for many months following other deaths and incidences of suffering that people say could have been avoided. Quite apart from the hardships Chinese people have had to face, the response has also been criticized from a public health response perspective as well. As the virus mutated into Omicron and its subvariants, it found reservoirs of vulnerable populations with poor immune response, the consequence of harsh lockdowns and inadequate vaccination coverage. This resulted in summer surges in various cities of the country. Shanghai was locked down for months and Beijing had closed schools and colleges for several weeks, even as the rest of the world was moving towards normalcy. In October this year, the daily count of cases in the country had doubled since the second half of September, when new cases trended around 900 per day. In fact, the cases have been showing signs of astronomical increase. 40,000 daily COVID cases were reported across China this past Saturday. It is believed the current protests are a result of the public's long-term dissatisfaction with the policy, which has come to the fore because of a recent incident. On November 24, a fire killed 10 people in a high-rise building in Urumqi, the capital of the restive Xinjiang region in northwest China. Crowds took to the street last Friday evening chanting, "End the lockdown." The crowd's anger was heightened by the belief that the forced lockdown led to a greater number of deaths and difficulty in evacuation. Interestingly, Xinjiang is the region that is always in news because of China's inhuman treatment meted out to the Uyghur Muslims. Many international organizations and governments in the West have alleged over the years that the treatment of Uyghurs amounts to a severe human rights violations at the hand of the Chinese government. Therefore, protests in Xinjiang are especially risky for Xi Jinping and for the overall perception of Chinese government in the eyes of the entire world. Now, these protests are happening at rather a peculiar time. Xi Jinping is trying to hold on to power for as long as possible, and he has shunted out some of the prominent names from the cabinet. The CPC has already given a free hand to this man, and he has his loyalists spread across the structure. In fact, Xi Jinping has been clamping down on his opponents, sidelining any voices that even make a remote attempt to challenge his authority. Just 1 month back, banners against Xi Jinping and zero-COVID strategy had come up in several places. But this time, the Chinese seem to be fed up of such harsh measures that have been imposed upon them since long, and they are rising against Xi Jinping. Perhaps another cultural revolution in China is in the making, but whether it will be the nemesis for Xi Jinping, it remains to be seen. This was all about the protests that have engulfed China. We hope you would like this new video. Thank you so much for watching.
Subscribe to One India channel and never miss an update.